You become this green monster that you can't control. It's this rage that is inappropriate for what just happened. They don't even remember that they had that outburst.
I think it's at least 40% of my kids with PANS. Kills me when they come in and they say, oh, my pediatrician said that's from growth.
Our sickest patients, sometimes their antibodies look fine. They look negative because they can't even make antibodies to fight these infections.
And I'm seeing at least an 85-90% return.
The blood-brain barrier really does try its best to keep the infections out of our brain, but we know they get in there. It will never be FDA approved because it's made for you and you alone.
Welcome to Demystifying PANS and PANDAS, the podcast where we uncover the mysteries, breakthroughs, and hope behind these life-altering conditions. I'm Dr. Nancy O'Hara, a board-certified pediatrician, educator, and advocate with over 3 decades of experience helping children and families navigate the challenges of neurodevelopmental and neuropsychiatric conditions, especially PANS and PANDAS. These disorders can feel overwhelming, but here we'll break down the science, explore transformative treatments, and share stories of resilience and recovery. If you've ever wondered what's possible for your child or how to find answers, this is the place to start. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Nancy O'Hara, and welcome back to Demystifying PANS PANDAS. I can't tell you how excited I am to invite Dr. Kelley to be here today. Casey's the founder and medical director of Case Integrative Health, an integrative and functional medicine practice in Chicago, Illinois. She specializes in complex chronic diseases, especially tick-borne diseases, and she has a really integrative blending conventional and integrative therapies approach to her practice, which I so enjoy. She's a graduate of the Ohio State University, or College of Medicine. Do they say both? Anyway, a 15-year member or more than that of the IFM and previously on the boards of ILADS. And more than that, Dr. Kelley is just an amazing clinician, a great lecturer. I've heard her and lectured with her many, many times, and really brings a wonderful perspective to all things integrative and functional medicine. So, Casey, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, Nancy. Thank you.
Now, I love to get perspectives different from mine, but when they're somewhat similar, I love them even more on, PANS, PANDAS, and especially what I think is missed a lot in this category, tick-borne infections, vector-borne diseases. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we see a lot of kids in our practice, and it's vector-borne infections are hard to treat. They're hard to diagnose. They're this big kind of nebulous gray cloud. None of it's black and white. And so it's really tricky. And it's hard even for kids, especially they can't express their symptoms the way an adult can. So it's harder to kind of pinpoint it sometimes. And it's actually pretty rare when someone remembers a tick bite.
Yeah.
They're so small. They don't hurt. They don't scratch. They don't itch. They don't cause these issues. And so it's really easy to miss a tick bite. So the vast majority of people come in saying, I've never had a tick bite. How do I have a tick-borne infection, right?
Right.
So that makes it even harder to pinpoint what they have and when they got it.
And not to mention not remembering the tick, but now we know there are many other vectors that can do it, whether it be fleas, maybe mosquitoes, bed bugs, and then lice, absolutely. And then not to mention the whole role of Bartonella and cats and even dogs and all of that. How often are you seeing Bartonella as a vector-borne disease in PANS?
Huge, especially with my kids with the anger outburst. So I call it hulking out. And, the little kids can get behind that. They understand that, and parents can understand that. You become this green monster that you can't control. It's this rage that is inappropriate for what just happened. It's not just I'm mad that you're using the purple fork instead of the red one. It's anger and hulk and throwing stuff. Those rage outbursts are really common with Bartonella patients. And then the kids sometimes don't remember it.
Yeah.
They don't even remember that they had that outburst. It's they totally
I totally
out
agree.
It.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I visualize the picture I put on a lot of my slides when I say Bartonella. It's that kid that's like puffing out smoke out of his ears and that rage. Absolutely. I think it's at least 40% of my kids with PANS. Do you think it's more than that, or is
I'm
that
seeing
about
it. Yeah, at least. I would say at
okay?
least 40, if not more. Yes, but in anytime there's these kind of neurological mood shifts, I immediately think about Bartonella. And Bartonella, they are finding it on ticks, but it's actually more likely on the lice, on the fleas, on those other biting insects. Almost every horseback rider that I treat
Yep,
has Bart.
yep,
There's these
absolutely.
other vectors that we're missing, and we kind of lump it into these ticks, but they're getting it somewhere
Yeah.
else too.
And besides the rage, which I totally agree with, and anytime I see that, it's Bartonella, not even till proven otherwise, it's Bartonella. What other symptoms are you seeing in kids, especially when you makes you think about Bartonella?
With Bartonella, yeah, so another big one is POTS and dysautonomia symptoms. So when they get dizzy and they stand up too fast or they're passing out or their heart rate is racing when they're just very still and stagnant. Those are another big one with
Yeah.
Bart. Bart also causes headaches. They tend to be more in the back of the head if they're able to verbalize kind of where that is. Stretch marks. So
Oh,
stretch
yeah.
marks on a little kiddo, especially weird ones, they're not necessarily where you would get stretch marks with a pregnancy and they're going the other direction. They
Yeah.
change color, they get purple or red and angry. And little kids who have not gone through a growth spurt, there's no reason for them to have a stretch mark, right? So those
Yeah.
Bart marks can be a
Yeah.
big sign.
It kills me when they come in and they say, oh, my pediatrician said that's from growth. I'm like, no. That's not from growth, and it's on your knee. It's on the back of your head. It's on your shoulder. Where I know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other one I see is rolling up their socks and their shoes, or the heel pain, the
Yep.
sole of the foot pain.
Yeah.
So
So it's very similar to plantar fasciitis, and it's often worse first thing in the morning. Sometimes these kids will scoot down the stairs because it hurts to walk that
yeah.
early, and then it gets better as the day goes on usually. That's another big one.
Yeah. And what about babesia? Are you seeing a lot of that in kids also?
Yeah, we do here in Illinois, we see a lot of babesia actually. Those are more of the anxious kids usually.
Mm-hmm.
I also see more deja vu and depersonalization with
Yeah.
babesia. So I will explain it to kids. Does it feel like you're watching yourself as if your life is a movie? You're kind of outside of yourself watching things happen. It feels really strange. That weird sensation will
Yeah.
often accompany that too.
Yeah, and I've lectured on Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which is just that with babesia. And I've had a few kids that I've treated for babesia after they've had that feeling for 6, 7, 8 years get better once it's recognized. Yeah.
Mm.
So I totally agree. And how are you seeing these pathogens present, like from an autoimmune or a PANS perspective, besides just those clinical things we've talked about?
Mhm.
What other things are
Yeah.
you seeing?
Yeah, so they fit into the PANS world because they can be very abrupt, that kind of night and day change that happens. Sometimes they're associated with fever, flu-like symptoms. Lyme can do that, definitely. But it's that quick change. It's my kid who was one way this day, going to school, thriving, straight A's, all the good things, and then the next day they can't get out of the car and walk into the school building. Something changed in these kids. And parents notice it. Parents notice it because it's not
Yeah.
their kid anymore
No,
overnight.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
it's interesting. I recently interviewed Ed Breitschwartz for this podcast. And, Ed is the international expert on Bartonella, plus just such a wonderful guy. And he talks about in the AIDS epidemic how he used to think that Bartonella was only an animal disease. How he wasn't thinking that humans could get it, which unfortunately, for most of our conventional medicine colleagues, that's what they still feel. But he was talking about how when the immune system is compromised with something else, then the Bartonella symptoms come out. And
Mhm.
I've seen that a ton
Mhm.
with COVID,
Yes. Yep.
bringing out chronic viruses, bringing out chronic
Lyme.
Bartonella,
Mhm.
Lyme of other. Yeah, absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
been crazy. Go ahead.
It's wild. It has changed the entire landscape of what we do. And I was just having a conversation about this today with a patient. Like, this is a common story we had. People didn't know they had Lyme. They didn't know they had Bart. They didn't know they had any of these things. They were fine. They chalked it up to aging, some aches and pains here, some fatigue, some brain fog, da, 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 da. And they got COVID and just all this
Yeah.
stuff came out that they didn't know they had because their system was managing it
Yeah.
well enough,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. It's been
Yeah.
wild. It's just
Yeah.
this ignite,
A-
this
And
ignition.
so many more kids with it.
Yeah.
And what tools are you using to help parents see? I mean, whether it be tests or other things to help them see that these vector-borne diseases may be part of the problem.
Yeah. Testing is important, but unfortunately, it's still so yucky and mucky and not great. It's like we have making some progress, but I can't wait for the day when it's okay, very clear. This is acute. This is ongoing. All these differences because these infections are so stealth and they hide. And a lot of the testing we have looks for antibodies, which is our body's reaction, which could be a memory. We could have some antibodies floating around, just surveillance and just make sure we're staying clear. So it's hard to say, yes, for sure, that's an active infection. But if they've never been treated for it, like
Yep,
we treat it right in there.
exactly.
But these antibodies are tricky because in a Western blot is a typical lab, for example, for Lyme with those antibodies. Our sickest patients, sometimes their antibodies look fine. They look negative because they can't even make antibodies to fight these infections. So they
Exactly.
can look falsely negative even though they're the sickest patients in there. So we go digging. We use a lot of different labs in our office. If I'm really highly suspicious of something, sometimes with parents' permission or patients' permission, we'll go ahead and treat empirically to see
Yeah.
what we get with knowing that. But we look at antibodies. We look at fish testing, which is an RNA test. We use different labs for that, like T labs or iGenex. We sometimes do T cell testing with iLabs. We use Galaxy a lot for Bartonella. It's one of my
Yep.
favorite Bartonella labs. They have some urine tests too. We can look for some urine tests for patients. So there's sometimes we have to look under six
Yeah.
different rocks. There it is. Found
Exactly.
it.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And I agree with you. If we have the symptoms, if we can talk about it that way, and we'll use questionnaires, even like Dr. Horowitz
Yeah.
questionnaire and documentation and a lot of the times, the test will be negative anyway. And the other thing you didn't mention, except in addition to the muckiness, is the expense.
Yeah.
And, being a
Yeah.
girl from West Virginia, I walk around with my mouth open at the cost of everything,
Yeah.
including us.
Mhm.
I'm not
Yeah.
trying to exclude us, but it's one of the things that we have to think about as we investigate these things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the insurance-based stuff is just crummy. It's even
Yeah.
crummier than crummy.
Yeah.
It's not worth it in
Absolutely.
so many sense,
Absolutely.
And I do try to be very judicious. Like, this lab is important because it will change the treatment or help,
Exactly.
find the way. If I don't think it's gonna help me, I don't spend the money or ask the
Exactly.
parents to spend the money as it.
Yeah. I always tell parents, what are we going to do differently with the results of this test? If I would treat you anyway based on this, this, and this,
Mhm.
you know, let's think about that. So,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and what about the ways you treat this in kids? How do you do it?
It varies. We treat kids with pretty similar array of treatments as we do adults, but in kid-sized doses. With the chronic cases, I do like to start with herbs in kids because I want to protect their gut. And this is a chronic issue. And, sometimes I have to. Sometimes I have to use antibiotics. And with an
Yeah,
acute issue, I will. But if I try herbs and we don't get anywhere, or sometimes I just need to you just know. Sometimes you just know we gotta do some medications here. But I do worry about all the, antibiotic resistance and gut healing and that stuff. So I try to be very mindful about that. But I know this isn't a quick and easy fix. It's not 2 weeks of an antibiotic and you're done. This is months and months and years of treatment. So I do tend to use a lot of herbs in kids, and kids respond beautifully to
don't
herbs.
they? I
They
so
do.
agree. And
Hmm.
like we were talking about, they may not show the antibodies because their immune system is suppressed or dysregulated from the actual tick-borne disease. And the antibiotics will even do more to suppress that because of the way it is affecting our guts, the first brain and the first line of defense of our immune system and all of that. So I so agree with you. And I know you like some of the combination herbal treatments, but there are so many different ways to skin that cat as long as you have a good practitioner. The herbs are so safe.
Oh, yeah. I have found them to be extremely safe.
Yeah.
Extremely. Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've heard you talk about a lot is detoxification, is the whole role of the whole body. people hear me say it too much. Talk about it from your perspective.
Yeah. We're also toxically burdened, just period in general. It's just been building over the years. And our bodies are meant to detox, but they can only detox so well. And when you start to throw infections and mold and COVID and all these things on top of it, the system is it's overwhelmed. But when we start to treat these cases, we often kind of muck all that up, kind of like shaking a snow globe, right?
Yeah.
That makes people feel really worse. That's part of that Herxheimer reaction. And so opening up those pathways and making sure we have exits for the toxins and the waste products and the things to clear out is hugely important. If I have a kiddo come in who's really constipated, can't sweat,
Yeah.
and often we'll start with a detox. Let's open up those pathways first because you will tolerate treatments better if you
Yeah.
are starting to and being able to manage and clear that out of your system first and foremost.
Yeah.
But it's tricky with kids because not only timing of everything, but pills. A lot of them can't swallow pills. So
Yeah.
we have to get really creative with
Yeah.
how we support that.
Yeah. And the herbals don't taste good. I mean, we're not going to lie, but maybe you add a little stevia, maybe you put them in something, that tastes a little bit better, or dark cherry or pomegranate juice or something. But
I was going to say, I like the pomegranate. Go.
I do too. I do too. Medicinally as well as
Mhm.
as taste. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think that one of the things you said that's so important is this is a marathon. When parents come in to either one of us and think, okay, now we're seeing Dr. Kelley, we're going to get better. It's going to be better next week. Reminding everybody that this is going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah. And really finding those victories. Kind of try to pick some short-term goals
Yeah.
too. Where do you want to be? Where are you not now? And what are some small term goals that we can do that can kind of help us prove that we are seeing improvements? We are getting better. This is all
Right.
worth it.
Right. And as
Yeah.
you said, treating the constipation, getting them to sweat, getting them to sleep, so important before we even
Mhm.
throw in the antimicrobials of any
Yeah.
sort.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And sleep regression's a big one with kids.
yeah.
And bedwetting, that comes up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you seeing any other reasons besides the bedwetting and constipation? I mean, besides inflammation and constipation for the bedwetting? Do you have any other thoughts on the bedwetting
But I
specifically?
think it's some neurological development
Okay.
regulations too, and there's that dysautonomia that
Yeah.
gets thrown out of place. The body just gets totally dysregulated, and
Yeah.
so sleeping becomes an issue, and it's a different kind of sleep, and all of a sudden they don't know they're sleeping, so
Yeah.
they wet
Yeah.
the bed.
And then it affects everybody because then mom's not sleeping, dad's not sleeping, brother and sister, the whole family comes in sleep deprived. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I know.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that I've recently heard you talk about, and I know you're lecturing on again, is the role of endothelial dysfunction
Mhm.
in chronic disease. And I think that's fascinating. Can you explain that vascular inflammation and all of that a little bit more and how it impacts pandas?
Yeah. So I really got interested because of COVID and how, again, I feel like that it changed the playing field.
Yeah.
It changed everything. And all of a sudden, everybody got stickier. Our blood got stickier. Why? What is going on here? And we know Lyme and tick-borne infections can create hypercoagulation. Babesia is bad at it, especially creates these nests in the blood vessels. It attacks red blood cells. So it creates that. So microclots and all of this. And we just threw COVID on it. And I mean, I don't know, like we do ozone in our clinic and we have to use heparin with it to make sure that the blood doesn't clot. We had to increase our heparin since COVID because we
Really?
weren't able to get the blood out. There's too many clots because it changed the train. It's wild what happened. So I started to dig into it and learned that it's not just COVID. It's chronic infections that play a role in really in creating this dysfunctional endothelium, which is the lining of our blood vessels, which is so important. And this is a really important immune and hormone and endocrine organ that is 60,000 square feet or whatever to the size of the world. It's crazy how big
Yeah.
this thing is and how these different infections affect the endothelial lining differently is really interesting. These guys are smart,
Yep. Much smarter than we
terrifying.
are.
Smart and terrifying, and they know how to get in there, and they've found their own little ways to figure this out and get in there. And when that endothelial system is disrupted, it creates ongoing perpetual inflammation. So it just continues this inflammation signal in our body. So we just continue to spit out all of these inflammatory cytokines, and that's exhausting. That in and of itself creates its own set of symptoms: chronic fatigue, circulation issues, numbness, tingling, the brain fog, the gamut of all of this, because those pathways are broken and inflamed and leaky. And it's just these compounding issues. And unless we look at that and try to reset those signals to get that lining in the glycocalyx, I call it seaweed, the seaweed flowing inside of it that helps with all the signals. Unless we, like, as part of the healing process, take a look at that, make sure it's okay to the best of our ability, and try to
Right.
heal it, we're just going to continue to perpetuate
Right.
these inflammatory signals because your
What
body thinks
what
it's under attack.
So two questions. One, how does that affect the blood-brain barrier? And two, how are you treating it in kids?
Hmm.
What's been
Yeah.
most successful?
Yeah, so it's going to affect all the barriers, really, potentially. The blood-brain barrier really does try its best to keep the infections out of our brain, but we know they get in there. And then once they're in there, how do they get out? What do we do now? But it affects kidneys, it affects the gut, it affects the lungs. It's everything gets affected by this because we have blood vessels everywhere in that. And the leakier our blood vessels are, the leakier our gut is, the leakier our brain is, it all just kind of perpetuates. So with kids, I try food as much as possible. Some of the foods that are really great for this, though, are things like beets and green leafy vegetables, which aren't necessarily the most kid-friendly foods to pick. But, we can hide spinach in applesauce. We can use beet powder and green powders to fit into a smoothie or bake into a muffin.
Yeah.
Like we can hide these and put them in
Yeah.
spaghetti sauce.
Meatballs. Yeah.
Meatballs. That's a good one. And we can hide this stuff in there. So if we can use food to get in there, all the better. Some of my favorite supplements are Arterosil or Endocalyx Pro. These things have seaweed in it to help repair, and just a whole bunch of food that does this. They are capsules and they're powder. We just open them
That's
and put
great.
that into their applesauce or food to help repair
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I always remind families, capsules are easy for kids to take. They're just opened up powders. Works. Now, in my head, I'm hearing the mom I'm seeing tomorrow who believes that all the issues are oxalates. And you say beets and green leafy vegetables. I hear her saying, wait, you're increasing my child's oxalates. What do you say to the parents that say that to you? Then you go to the endocalyx or
Then you go,
or what?
maybe go to
Okay.
supplements. Some of the things that are going to help boost nitric oxide, which is a big part of the endothelium too, would be watermelon, melons, those kind of foods. Nuts and seeds are also really high in this. So you're going to be able to find some low oxalate foods. If they really have an issue with oxalates, we try to avoid that. I just don't find that super duper often that's really the issue.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Thank you for saying that. You're again, I did not feed her any of this information. Those of you who are listening and know me well, I didn't prep her. So anyway, no, I so agree. And I think those things are so important. And it takes me back to Bob Navio's persistent cell danger response, because we're really in that same world with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Agree?
Agreed. And I can't wait for the day when we can test where someone is in their cell danger response. I'm sure their bodies are different parts are in different stux responses, but yeah, that is such a huge part of this.
Yeah.
Huge
Yeah.
part of it.
And a
Yeah.
huge part of that is also what I hear you talking a lot about is stress and vagus repair and any way to decrease stress. Talk about that a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah. I try to, especially when I'm talking to kids about stress, I try to normalize it a little bit.
Okay.
We think and talk about stress it's this awful thing, and too much of it is, but a little bit of stress also helps us get our homework in on time
Yeah.
and get stuff accomplished. So we can kind of wrap our head around maybe that, okay, there's some good support here, and try to, keep that positive attitude about things. But when we're overly stressed, forget about it. Our system is just burned out. And I think a lot of these patients, the other problem is a lot of these patients, their symptoms just get chalked up to that. Oh, you're just a stressed out mom.
Oh,
That's
so
what's
true.
going on. And it's not fair, because that's not what this is.
Right.
But you throw the psychological stress of life on top of this, and then the physiological stress of chronic infections. This is a perpetual fight or flight situation. We are
Yep.
stuck in fight
Yep.
or flight. And our systems are not designed for that. We're not. And we have to learn how to relax and recover because otherwise we're never going to get better. And, I have to say it all the time because I'm, in part reminding myself all of these
Me
things
too.
too.
Yep.
Oh, yes, that's right. Breathe. That's right. That's good. Okay. Yeah, we got this. And, kids, I think, have a hard time wrapping their heads around stress too. But a lot of these kids come from broken homes. And then when they're not feeling well, the parents are often at odds
I know.
related to it. And, they think, and it just puts the kids in the middle, which is just this,
I know.
thing. So, we talk about deep belly breathing. I often will have kids lay on the ground on their back because that's a much easier way to get your belly up and down and wrap because trying to get a kid to deep belly breathe is entertaining.
Yeah.
But if they lay on their back, all of a sudden it makes sense, and kind of blowing the balloon and talking through that. There are some limbic systems out there that are a little more kid friendly, like what's it called? Sound and
Safe and sound?
yeah, safe and sound. Thank
Yeah.
you. And just music, just playing
Yeah.
music, calming music for the kids, even if they're not in a flare. It's actually
Yeah.
sometimes better just to have it like regular. So when they are down, we could try to really.
Yeah. For me too. I mean, my husband brought music into my life and it brings us all, just you can feel it in your body. And I always say to the moms, you're doing this for your kid, but the putting your oxygen mask on first is a real thing. If you can't do it for yourself, know that your breathing, you're bringing it down a notch is really treating your kid too.
It's beautiful. It's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I heard you talk about the binaural beats, like the
Yeah.
headphones at night.
Uh-huh.
I have never used that one.
Oh,
Talk
it's a
about
good one.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love binaural beats because it's very passive. It does the work for you. It's kind of this hack, if you will. And you have to listen in with headphones because one ear is hearing a different hertz than the other
Yeah.
ear. And that difference correlates with certain brain waves. So there's different kinds of binaural beats out there. So and there's free apps out there that do this. There's also paid apps that do it as well. And I have this little headphones for my little one, not, but the over the ear ones too. And they're wired. I use the wired stuff.
Yeah.
And
So do I.
yeah. So, but for sleep or stress or focus too, you can listen to these and you can just have it on in the background and it biohacks the brainwaves to go, oh, I'm supposed to be sleepy now.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. I like
which
that.
doesn't require any thought process. And the good part about kids is they don't usually have the ability to override it. Adults can
Yeah.
still override it, but kids, they're like, oh,
Yep.
that's nice. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Uh-huh.
while we're talking about stress, one other thing that I've heard you say that is so resonates with me is, we talk about having a good diet. We talk about an anti-inflammatory diet. You just talked about the beets and the green leafies and way to get good things into kids. But they're still kids. And even as adults, we'll sometimes eat something that we shouldn't. Like, let's be honest. And one of the things I've heard you say is the stress about eating it is worse than eating it.
Mhm.
Talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit, because I love that.
Yeah. I'm in the 80-20 camp over here. I think having done elimination diets and do them, and I do think they're useful tools, but the stress of having to worry about every single last morsel that goes into your body is overwhelming and causes more stress and keeps you in that fight or flight a lot of the times. So I think as humans, no one's perfect. And so we can allow ourselves some grace. And if we make smart choices with our treats, but when we cheat and when we treat ourselves, my other saying is like you have to enjoy it. So if your thing is pizza and you have a piece of pizza, like you need to sit and enjoy it and
Yes.
relish in it and how it's the best pizza you've ever had. This is so good, and chew it, 100 times and, not shovel it in your face and feel guilty because that defeats the
Exactly.
entire purpose.
Exactly. I know. And my mentor was Sid Baker, who one of the most brilliant men, and he always ate a piece of chocolate. Now it was dark chocolate, so a little bit better. After every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a little bit before bedtime. And to watch him eat it and savor every little morsel, that if we're going to do it, let's enjoy it. I just love that. And when you look at the food pyramid, the good food pyramids, the bottom is about people dancing and smiling and enjoying eating. And I just got back from Tuscany recently, and it reminded me about the joy of eating. And so
Yeah.
much of our lives are rushing or, let's eat this as we go to this sports thing or, everybody's watching TV while they're eating. The enjoyment of it is such a
Mhm.
big part.
Yeah. It's lost in our culture a little bit too, and I think you're right. It's the rush of it. It's all the activities, it's all the things we have, but to get to sit down and really and it's not just the food, it's the community,
Yeah.
which is so good for us too,
Yeah.
right? And enjoy that
And our
time and slow
kids.
down.
Yeah. And don't process every food. Don't eat every processed food. That
Yeah.
goes without saying. Yeah, I know. I know. And I've also heard you talk about trauma as one of, we know COVID, we know mold, we know that's all reactivating these vector-borne diseases, but trauma too. And
Mhm.
talk about trauma a little
Yeah.
bit.
Well, I think I call it kind of trauma with a capital T. So
Hmm.
there's these events that happen to us that create this trauma and our body doesn't forget. And some of these traumas are actually can kind of seem not to be a capital T, like they might seem, but you could just be like, but that wasn't really traumatic, but it really was to
Hmm.
your system. And it feeds the loop in your brain, this post-traumatic stress loop, which keeps you in that hyper-vigilant fight or
Yep.
flight state. And so
Yep.
if you have a history of and trauma can be that other inciting incident. We talked about COVID bringing out tick-borne infections. Trauma can
Yeah.
bring out tick-borne infections.
Exactly.
And the flip side is the physiological trauma, let alone the medical trauma with a
Yeah.
capital M and a capital T
Yeah.
with these patients. But the physiological trauma of these infections perpetuate that same loop, that
Yes.
same loop. And so we just get stuck. And God love our brains and our bodies are trying to protect us, Don't go down that alleyway.
Yep.
They're trying, but
Yep.
and they just get stuck in these hypervigilant modes and it actually makes everything worse.
Yeah.
And that's part of that healing journey to get from being that sick person dealing with this to a healthy person and being able to enjoy being healthy. And out of that is that gap to learn how to rewire that
Yeah.
system. It goes back to stress. It goes back to the vagus nerve. All of they're all connected and rewire that so that you feel safer in your own
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
with and these things and dealing with that trauma can do so much for all of your physical symptoms. I
Absolutely.
mean, and we have patients, that's all it took. You
Yeah.
didn't need all the pills, you didn't need all the IVs, you just needed to have the courage to face that trauma and process
Yeah.
it, which
Yeah,
is terrifying.
I've had
It's
so
hard
many
work.
kids, and I had one young woman. We had done absolutely everything, but we had missed the trauma that she had had as a little kid, and it wasn't until we went back and really resolved that and helped her to work through that then she was great and is now a spokesperson for PANDAS and all the
Yeah.
ways you get. It just all of these things play a role. So
And
so
that's
true.
and that's why these things are so complicated.
Yeah.
It's not a simple, "Oh, you have this, and here's your treatment, and you're done." Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And that reminds me about flares. What are your go-tos for what we call flares in
Mhm.
PANDAS?
Yeah. So for us, there's a couple kind of areas that I focus. One is support detox, flush out the toxins, lower that, and two is lowering inflammation, and they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. But I think Berber panella is a wonderful
Love
herb,
Berber Panella.
especially for the
Yeah.
neurological stuff. That can and
Yeah.
people don't take enough of it. You can take a lot. An adult can
Yeah.
take it eight times a day
Yeah.
if they need to. I
In
also
my
kind of
opinion, so can a kid.
yeah,
You know,
I I don't think you can overdose on Berber
I
panella.
don't either.
I also really love Epsom salt baths
Yes.
for kids, but a lot of Epsom salt. It's not just a little bit, it's 2 cups or more. You could
Okay.
put baking soda, you can put some lavender, you can put some of that in there, but just that can turn off a herx and a flare pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and kids. I also really like sweating and having them run around if they're
Yep.
able.
Yep.
That can be
Yep.
a good one,
And getting
especially
out in the dirt, even if you
yes.
live in New York City, a little flower box, getting your
Mhm.
hands in the dirt, turmeric,
Yes. Yeah.
as an anti-inflammatory.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
love that. Yeah, but I
Mhm.
so agree. Although
Mhm.
I need to use more Epsom salt. I mean, I use Epsom salts all the time,
Mhm.
but I'm usually telling people a cup, so I need to up that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. Now, you do bigger ticket items, I call, and you have talked about them. Talk a little bit about a couple of those. Talk to me a little bit about
Mhm.
SOT, what it
Sure.
is, what it
Yeah.
means, especially when it comes to Bartonella, Babesia,
Mm.
things like that.
And we have had success with this in kids too, with parental consent, obviously. But so SOT is supportive oligonucleotide therapy, and here's how I describe it. Now, one, it will never be FDA approved because it's made for you and you alone. So, that's off the table. And because of that, I can't give it to anybody else because this is made specifically for you. It's very targeted anti-pathogen technology. So let's just say we're treating BART. So, and we know it's Bartonella henselae. We generally need to know, is it henselae, quintana, et cetera. We draw the lab is in Greece. So we draw the blood, send it to Greece, and they look for Bartonella henselae. And they look and they find the DNA of that pathogen and they find the area that says grow and replicate. And they make the antidote for that, basically. So they make the opposite of it. And this is what we give in an IV infusion. It's a simple push, it's not hard. And that goes around, and this is a very, very targeted approach. And it's not going to affect our cells. It doesn't teach our cells to make anything. It's not, our cells are going to ignore it. It's going to go right to the Bartonella, link up to there. And then the Bartonella can no longer grow and replicate.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's very, very targeted, which is great when we have GI issues. We can't take antibiotics anymore for one reason or another. We're plateaued, et cetera. I actually use it earlier and earlier now. And after I've used it now for about 4 years in practice, I've started to incorporate it sooner because I think it actually ends
Awesome.
up saving a lot of time.
Yeah.
You
I've
will hurt.
really found that
There's a die-off.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's all manageable. I've seen worse hercs on herbs than SOT, and the problem is sometimes you have to do it a lot because you have 10 bugs and you have to go through one at a time and do them. But each time you do it, a little
Yeah.
bit is lifted. And then the next
Yep.
thing comes up. And then it's the next, and it really is a cool way to really try to
Yeah.
get rid of these guys.
I like that. And now
Yeah.
you're still, detoxing them,
Mm-hmm.
bringing down inflammation at least somewhat as you
Mm-hmm.
can, and then doing the SOT.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you do it once for, let's say, Bartonella henselae, not that it ever happens that you just have one germ, but we have seen kids get better with
Mhm.
one SOT.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have to repeat it for the same germ? Or is it repeating it, using it unique to each one? Explain that just a little
Yeah,
bit
I
more.
do sometimes have to repeat
Okay.
it. It's usually a year or so later. They're better. It's much easier the second go around, but it's still there on labs, so we can still treat it because we just want to get rid of it. But it's not as common. It's often more of doing the next one and the next one and the next one, or a different strain. So we did Bartonella henselae, but now we have to do Quintana or a different one in there. And where I hear some people or patients talk about how they heard so and so had a really bad go of it or whatever, what I see though is if Bartonella just seems to be the biggest culprit, it's causing the biggest amount of symptoms, and we treat it, now all of a sudden this new stuff comes up that they weren't necessarily experiencing before or was really quiet. And they're like, I'm worse than I was before. You're different than you were before because now it's this guy. We got to treat
Yep.
this guy. And so I try to warn people about that too, because that definitely happens.
Yeah.
But it just means we're peeling away the layers. In my opinion, it's all good.
That's
But
what I was going to say.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's a very good treatment that most people don't know anything about and think about it incorrectly. So I appreciate you expanding on that and talking about it because I agree. I mean, I'm seeing at least an 85-90% return. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the highest. I never want to promise, yes, this is going to work, but it is one of the higher things. Medications, herbs, a third, roughly speaking, where we'll plateau, we'll get stuck somewhere. But this one has a much higher efficacy
Yeah,
to it.
I agree. Now, I know you also use peptides, you use Flowpressa, you use IVs and other things. Are there others of those that you think are really helpful to our
Mhm.
kids that you want to expand on a little bit?
Yeah, I really do like IV ozone for the right kid. We've had a good amount of PANDAS kids and Lyme kids in general. We've tried other things, et cetera, whatever reason. But if we can get some ozone in them, that's where they start to really turn the
Yeah.
corner. Now, it's an
Really
IV
decreasing the
therapy.
inflammation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it helps to treat the bugs too. There's an antimicrobial component, especially Babesia. because the
Okay.
ozone is treating the red blood cells, it's treating the blood, and that's where red Babesia lives. So I really like to go after it on the hard to treat Babesia kids. But, again, you have to have the right kid because it's an IV. You're going to draw out blood and put their blood back. It's not an easy feat.
Right.
So, but in the right kid, we've seen some really cool, quick
Yeah.
turnarounds too, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we're not saying that okay, you've got Bartonella, go right to ozone. Go to Dr. Kelley and her group, and they will help you decide together when to put that in, but I do think those are both, I've seen great responses with both of those. Absolutely. So any others that you wanted to mention?
So another one that I actually like in kids a lot is just molecular hydrogen. I don't know if you use that at all, but especially when they come in really anxious and riled up. We have some of the kids that come in and they're like banging their head type of things too. It's just a simple nasal cannula. They breathe normally, but it helps to convert cytotoxic radicals to water, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier so it can get into that brain and help calm down that inflammation. It's so
Yeah.
simple. It's harmless. You're just going to make you
Yeah.
pee
Yeah.
because you get more water. But that's another one that we will incorporate. That's generally easier in the
Right.
kids.
And without the
Yeah.
IV. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know, we have some practitioners that listen to this podcast also, and I know you have an online course. Is that true? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have, right now I have my groundwork for healing course available at healwithcase.com. And I designed this to kind of get those foundations. So especially for people who don't have immediate access to integrative medicine, what can we do to, I don't know what's going on with me, but there's something, what do I do to help? And it really focuses on what I call the 5 foundations. So it's what you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you stress, and how you detox.
Love it.
And it goes through in detail how to effectively manage those. And that alone should make some huge impacts on your symptoms and hope to quiet down some of that noise too, because sometimes we're so inundated. Our symptom list is 3 pages long, right? This can really help to calm it down. So it's more like 1 page or
Yeah.
5, and that makes it much easier when you do get to the provider to go, oh, that makes sense. I know exactly what's going on with you versus, 3 pages and everything's out of it. So I really wanted to create, and I think it's good too for people to go back to those basics,
Absolutely.
and when things get flared up and life comes at us,
Yeah.
so just go back to those basics. Yeah. And so I'm really excited. It's a good one. I am working on a Lyme one as well. This one's going to be more like 10 modules and 4 or 5 videos per module and all kinds of good stuff. So it's a labor of love and it is a process and it's coming.
Okay. All right. We'll watch for that. But the other one is healwithcase.com.
Calm.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
And, after listening to you, I'm sure there'll be lots of people that want to find out, can they see you? How do they get in touch with you? Please, I know there'll be stuff in the show notes, but please let people know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So our website is Case Integrative Health. We're on social media as well. We're based in Chicago. So if you're an Illinois resident, for sure, give us a call. We see patients from out of state. They fly in to see us so they can establish care with us in Illinois. And I have a team of 3 PAs that work with me dealing with our chronic complex illness cases. And they're wonderful. My team is really good, really good. So if you can't get in to see me, I have trained these women. They're brilliant. They're going to talk to me too. We're all going to help you together. We treat everybody as a team here at the office. We also have a longevity and hormone arm of our clinic too. There's a physician and 2 PAs over there. We have cardiologists in our office too. So we try to cover the gambit and not just the chronic complex, but also my goal is to get those chronic complex cases up to what I call a disco ball. So they've got their life back. And we celebrate this. We drop the disco ball, we play music. It's a big thing in our office. But once we're there, I can hand them off to the longevity group. Now let's keep you well. How do we keep you here? In that
Love
aspect. So it's
that.
really fun. It's a fun group of people. We really care and listen. And I work with some great people. So if you please, we would love for you to call and come
Well,
see us.
I really appreciate your approach. The joy and the knowledge, but more than that, the compassion sort of emanates from your website, from you, and I really appreciate what you do. So
That means a lot coming from you. So thank you, Nancy.
No, I
Yeah.
mean that sincerely. And any last words of hope or wisdom or experience you want to leave our parents or practitioners with?
Yeah. So it is a marathon. Like we said, it's not a sprint. So kind of picking some of those small victories and focusing on that, and try to have fun too. It's okay to try to have fun and enjoy this life. I think that's a big part of our healing too. Laughter is the best medicine, they say. But we don't always give ourselves that opportunity, especially as parents, especially parents of sick ones. We're so hyper focused on that. But create joy and try to have fun, even if it's just being silly and dancing in the
Yep.
kitchen. That counts.
I agree. I
Find
agree.
that. And then you'll start to see fun in other things, and life isn't as it becomes a little less hard.
I love that. I'm going to go dance.
I'll dance
So,
with.
All right. All right.
Right.
Casey, thank you. I so appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next time on Demystifying Pans Pandas. Take care.
That's it for today's episode of Demystifying Pans Pandas. I hope you're walking away with insights, tools, and hope to help you and your child on this journey. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with anyone who might need it. It could be the lifeline they're searching for. And if you have a moment, leaving a review helps us reach even more families who deserve answers. Also, for more information, training, and community, check out our website, drohara.com, and join our annual membership. And remember, every step forward, no matter how small, brings us closer to healing and understanding. Until next time, be present, be hopeful, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Demystifying Pans Pandas.